Teaching skills. The formal definition of a teaching skill is that it is a particular teaching behavior that contributes to the effectiveness and uniqueness to the teaching model. Thus, teaching skill is a specific activity or teaching behavior of a teacher. It depends upon the teaching skills of a teacher, that how qualitatively and how intelligent the teacher is in addressing and making the students to learn things. The first of the teaching skill is a skill of stimulus variation. Now let's have a look on what is this, the skill of stimulus variation. Now this skill of stimulus variation involves deliberate change in attention drawing behavior of the teacher in order to secure and sustain students' attention to what is being taught. Now, this variation, that is the skill of stimulus variation, implies attracting and focusing students' attention by changing the stimuli in the environment. Now, what is a stimulus or stimuli? Stimulus refers to an agent, action, or condition that elicits, accelerates, or arouses to physiological or psychological action, activity, or responses. Now, what is this variation? Variation means changing these stimuli to explain content lively and remove the boredom from the classroom teaching. Now, there are different components of stimulus variation. So, in this PowerPoint, we will be dealing with the 7 components of stimulus variation. The first one is teacher's movement. And the other components of stimulus variation are gestures, changes in speech pattern, focusing, change in interaction style, oral visual switching, physical involvement of the student. The first component of this teaching skill, that is the skill of stimulus variation, is varying movements within the classroom for a pedagogic purpose. For example, writing on the board, movement to the student who is responding to some question, conducting experiment, etc. So these are the components included in the uh, in the skill of stimulus variation. The second component is gesture. Purposeful movements of the parts of the body of the teacher to communicate certain meaningful ideas to the students. These include movements of head, hand, and body parts to arrest attention. The third component is the changes in speech pattern. This is the use of pitch in voice projection to indicate relative importance of information. These include variation in voice or accent of voice, silence or pause to avoid boredom. Silence or pause by the teacher for a moment can attract students' attention and increase their desire to listen. Silence can indicate that what has just been said or done is unacceptable or important. The fourth component is focusing. Now, this focusing is used to concentrate the attention of the students on some specific point or event which they are required to observe. Focusing can be obtained through verbal communication or gestures or both. Now, how can this focusing be obtained through verbal communication? Verbal focusing is like, look here, listen to me, note it carefully. This is very important. So you're stressing on, you're focusing on the particular things verbally. The second is gesture focusing. How do you do that? It could be done by pointing towards some object with fingers or underlining the important words on the board and highlighting on the projector. So these are the ways of non-verbal focusing. And the third, verbal and gesture focusing uses both or combines both. The other component in stimulus variation is a change in interaction style. Interaction style can be used as a stimulus, for example, teacher student, student teacher, or student student. Teacher student interaction style means the teacher has a dialogue with the whole class, communicates to the students as a whole, not to individual students. This is teacher student interaction. Now, what is teacher student interaction? This is the teacher has a dialogue with a certain student, communicates with the students as individuals. Now, what is student interaction style? The teacher is not involved in the students' activities, functioning as an observer. Teacher here functions as an observer. He lets the students discuss in groups. The other component is oral visual switching. Now, giving information to the class using oral or visual medium is essential for the teachers to change the medium to sustain students' attention. We can switch in between oral to visual. While explaining points, one shows a model, oral to visual. When we show a model while explaining the things, that is, you are switching from oral to visual. And after showing the chart, again start speaking. This is a switching from visual to oral. Now, there also could be switching from oral to oral visual. Like while speaking, one shows charts, objects, and models and explains their various parts. It is switching from oral to oral visual. Now, the third kind is visual to oral visual. That is, the teacher shifts focus from the visual stimulus to the verbal, this oral, then to visual. And the final component of stimulus variation is the physical involvement of the student. The teacher can change the focus of attention by involving students in physically doing something, like in experiments, handling apparatus, or dramatization. Hope you understood this teaching skill, the skill of stimulus variation well.